Hello, so welcome to a new reading vlog. This week I'm going to be trying to catch up on my reading. To be honest, it's already Thursday, but I think we might be able to do it because the books that I was planning to read in this week, which I'm now late because last week's books ran over, and I feel like I've been doing this week after week after week for ages. Anyway, these ones are shorter ones, so I think we might be able to do it, or at least come close to finishing them by the end of the week. So both of the books that I am going to be reading this week are books that were pretty popular a while ago. When was this book published? 2011? I don't think the other one's quite that old, but I think the hype might have been kind of 5 to 10 years ago. Anyway, let's tell you about the books. Firstly, I'm going to be reading A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness. This is a book, I think it's meant to be quite a lovely story, but also it deals quite a lot with grief. So I think we're following this boy whose mother is sick, and then every night he dreams of this monster coming and telling him a story. That might not quite be right because it's been a long time since I heard many people talking about this. It has also been made into a film. I don't know whether I could ever possibly access that and watch it. Maybe, we'll see. But I am excited to read this as well. I've noticed on the pages, there's really not many words, and the lines are quite well spaced. So maybe I can read this by Sunday. Hopefully. The other thing I have is an audiobook because I always need a physical book and an audiobook on the go. And the audiobook that I will be reading is A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. So this is a reread for me, and I've actually just remembered I do have a copy just over there. Can I see on here when it was released? The audiobook's 2020, but that's not right. Anyway, A Darker Shade of Magic is set in this world where there are multiple Londons. So there's Grey London, which is our London and has no magic. Then we've got Red London, which is really lush and abundant in magic. Then we've got White London, which is kind of dying off from having too much magic. And then Black London, which has actually been locked off because things got dangerous. And we're following Cal, who's able to move between the different Londons. Only certain people are able to do that. But also, Cal is being somewhat naughty and smuggling between the different Londons, which is going to get him in a bit of trouble. So this book series was, again, popular a while back. The spin-off series is about to come out, so The Fragile Threads of Power. So I'm trying to reread this series in anticipation of that new book coming out. Victoria Schwab as well is posting kind of videos based around a read-along reread of this series. So I will try and watch the videos that are relevant to each of the parts that I read as we go, and then maybe I'll incorporate my thoughts about that into this video as well. But it's less than 12-hour audiobook, so again, shouldn't take me too long, hopefully. Which hopefully means we can actually catch up on our reading plans. I don't know why I keep making such unrealistic plans. Honestly, I keep trying to make them realistic and still failing, so I don't know, but we're going to try. Hello, so welcome to a really horrible rainy day. My neighbor cat came in this morning soaking wet and has been getting in the way of my productivity all morning because he was insisting on sitting on my lap, which was adorable, but kind of inconvenient, but cat's got to do what a cat's got to do. I do, though, want to update you on my reading. So firstly, I read some of A Monster Calls last night. I was right. It is a very quick read because, there's just hardly any words on each page. There's big gaps between each lines, and then there's all this, margin space. Anyway, basically, we've just been introduced to this boy who, at the start, he's having nightmares, which I kind of needed because what I realized when I sat down to read this is that after having read Yumi and the Nightmare Painter for quite a few nights in a row, I kind of miss Yumi and the Nightmare Painter. So it was nice to at least have a few nightmares in this so I wasn't missing out on everything that I've kind of gotten used to over the last week. Anyway, we're following this boy. He's 13. His mother is really sick and he's having these nightmares. And then this monster comes and tells him that he's going to tell him stories. So I think I had the synopsis pretty much right. And I've read to the end of the first story. I will say for the bits that are kind of following the boy through his everyday life, so there are bits as well where he's going to school and he's being bullied and he's kind of got this friendship with this girl that he's grown up with that's now having difficulties. And so there's a lot of this school stuff as well. But I will say I feel like it's written in the way that adults remember what being a kid is like. And that is not very well. So it's kind of I think written kind of at a distance in some ways, or somewhat jumpy, or almost like a dream itself, but not necessarily in the lyrical way that you might think. Anyway, Then the story that the monster does tell him is kind of fairy tale-ish. It's about this evil queen and a young prince and how the tree gets involved in their story. Again, the story is quite high level, like a fairy tale really. But as well, the story doesn't really have the lessons that you would expect it to have. It kind of twists the tropes of a normal kind of fairy tale story. And that's something the boy's asking, like, well, what am I meant to learn from this? And the monster is like, do you think I came here to teach you lessons? So I'm quite liking it, but I really don't know where it's going to go. But I think I can probably finish it super quick, definitely by the end of the weekend, like I was aiming. The other thing that I'm reading is A Darker Shade of Magic. I'm about 25% of the way through the audiobook. I have to say, I think we got the UK audiobook, and the guy that's narrating it does it in like this quite posh British kind of way, and I don't like it. So I'm trying to deal with that, but I am really loving the story, actually. It's been so long that I read this that I started thinking maybe the story is overhyped, but actually already, like, from what we've been introduced, I can see how many things are being set up, and I'm remembering how many parts there are to the story and kind of how it all comes together. And so now I'm quite excited for this reread, or more excited than I was before. So we've had Cal go to Grey London and kind of get an introduction to his smuggling activities. He's also gone home to Red London, and we've met his family. He has been raised by the king and queen and like as a brother to the prince, even though there's a lot of mystery surrounding his history, although he suspects that the king and queen might know more than they're telling him. And then as well, he went on a trip to White London, and we're learning a lot about all the awfulness that's happening in White London. And we have also been introduced to the other main character, Lila. So Lila comes from Grey London, and she's basically just a homeless thief, very morally grey. She has dreams of becoming a pirate. And I really love Lila. I wasn't sure if I'd love her again on the reread, but so far I'm really enjoying her, and I'm really looking forward to, again, how that is all going to fit together with what's happening with Cal. Like, I just think I really love fantasy stories where there's a lot of world building, the magic's really interesting, and then all these different pieces end up coming together, and I think this is that, which... that's cool, right? This is why this series is so popular. I think I'd kind of forgotten. Anyway, so far, this half week of catching up on reading, it's going pretty well.
Lazy Sunday mornings, hiding under covers. I don't mind staying in with you.
Hello, so time for a reading update. I did go for quite a long run this morning, and I managed to get, I think, about 2/3 of the way through this. I'm finding it like just very consumable, even though I still don't like the audiobook narrator and like the way that he does Lila Bard's voice. Very annoying. He makes her just seem like a spoilt child, which is definitely not the definition of Lila Bard, because she is very not spoiled. But I hate the audiobook narrator or the way he's doing it still, even though it's not necessarily bad. And actually, this is a big tangent, but it was kind of making me think of the audiobook narration for The Black Prism, but I think the narration suited The Black Prism better. And also, I still think The Black Prism narration was better. But then I was also thinking that I do think there's some similarities between the two series. So I think if you like A Darker Shade of Magic, then you might like the Black Prism series. The only thing, I'm always a little bit hesitant to recommend that series because I feel like some of the way that it approaches certain topics are a little bit problematic. And really, I feel like Brent Weeks is trying to deal with topics in a good way. Like, I think he's trying to address fat phobia and misogyny and slavery and all sorts of other things. It's just sometimes the way he does it is not the best. And I've definitely seen a lot of people not love that. But I do think the series has kind of like similar depth or similar kind of hardness to its magic systems. And as well, we have morally grey characters like the Black Prism in the Black Prism series, but also Lila Bard. I really like her. She's kind of a disaster, but also a badass. So we're getting a lot of her, and now her and Cal, I guess, are going on a bit of a journey, a bit of a quest. I have also started watching the Victoria Schwab videos. I've read now the first two parts of those videos. And I think as well, like, she's kind of just giving a recap of what's happening. So it's kind of like making sure that I pick up on the important things, but she's, I guess, also talking about like the importance of these scenes and like what we're learning as we get each scene, which bits she thinks are important, which bits she sees as like foreshadowing or like emphasizing certain things. So I do recommend as well those videos if you either aren't going to reread this before you read Fragile Threads of Power. It would be a good recap, but also like if you are rereading it, it's a nice little addition, I think. I don't think I'd recommend it if you were reading this series for the first time though, because as I said, she's kind of talking about the foreshadowing of certain things, which would kind of be spoilery if you were reading this for the first time. Anyway, I'm really loving this. I think I'd kind of forgotten how much there is to the world and like how there's multiple plot threads going on. And I think some of those plot threads are like subtle enough that you kind of don't notice them at first, but I know that they're going to be important. So, a very satisfying reread, really. Would recommend rereading it if you've read it before and you don't remember anything. Anyway, the other thing I've been reading is A Monster Calls. I have read through, I don't know how far I am, probably about 2/3 of the way through this as well. The monster came and told his second story. Similar to the first one, it's kind of like a fairy tale story, but there's like a lack of clarity around who the bad guy is, and I guess that links into this young boy's experience with his mother being sick. I don't know if I've said, and I don't really think it's spoilers, but she's essentially got like it's not really mentioned so far, but seems like she's got cancer because she's getting treatments and they're not going well and she's really sick. And then the young boy's kind of grandmother and father are around and he's very frustrated with the way they're approaching it and also just the way the teachers and his school friends are approaching him and like treating him like he can get away with anything because of his mother being sick and he really just wants to be treated like normal. But I think as well it's kind of showing how the adults in the story don't really know what to do either because it's just such an awful situation. There was one bit that almost made me tear up a bit, although I still feel like, the boy kind of did a thing and it kind of just was written as if he just did it and he didn't really know why he did it. And while that is an experience that we all have at times, especially when we're processing traumatic events, I sort of felt like it was more of that, like adults not remembering what it was like to be a child or like an adult's perspective of being a child. And you're like, oh, and then they just did this random thing. But when you're a child, you did know why you did it and it made sense to you. So yeah, I still feel like the real life parts feel very like memories rather than telling a story. But I am especially enjoying the bits with the monster. I really like the monster. He's kind of like a tree monster. I love him. And I'm really enjoying his stories, actually. I think that's my favorite part of this book. So, I think I'll probably finish this tonight. Maybe. Anyway, it's still Saturday, so I think I'm doing pretty good at catching up on my week's reading. Hello. So, last night I did, in fact, finish this off. To be honest, Jace had fallen asleep on my shoulder and I was trying not to cry on him at the end. So, it did make me cry. I will say, I don't think necessarily it was because I felt particularly attached to what the characters were going through or like particularly attached to the characters. It's just like the general concept of someone's mother being really sick and certain things happening being very awful that made me cry, really. And I didn't like sob. I just cried gently. So quite a sad ending. I was a little bit disappointed in the monster's third story, although I would also say that it was quite creative how it kind of combined the story with the boy's real life. And I do think as well in the end it was fairly satisfying, like the reason why the monster had come to him and just the whole story. It made me cry. It's fairly satisfying and it was also very creative, but at the same time I don't actually know why there are so many noisy cars driving past my house. I don't actually know if this will stick with me in the long run. I think maybe it would be a good book for someone younger who was going through something similar, although maybe that would be like way too overwhelming. So I don't know. I can see why a lot of people love this and I do think it's really well written. I think it's really creative, but like also I think I'll forget it. I don't know. The other thing that I'm reading, of course, is A Darker Shade of Magic. I've hardly read any of this, and it's funny because like I want to say this story will stick with me better, but obviously I had forgotten a lot of it since the last time I read it. But I think it's still stuck with me better than I think that one will. Anyway, I haven't read much. The only thing I do think is a bit funny is throughout this, Cal is kind of made out to be like the more moral one, and Lila, the morally grey one. But it was just a scene that did really point out that Cal is a smuggler and Lila is a thief, and those are both criminals, so they are really both criminals of a type. But I guess there's a little bit in here about how like Cal sometimes does criminal things but he doesn't enjoy them, whereas Lila does enjoy them, or at least admits to enjoying them. Maybe Cal enjoys them but he doesn't admit to it, or maybe he doesn't enjoy some aspects but he does enjoy others. Anyway, I just do like how it contrasts the characters against each other, and I do think this is probably a book you would get more and more out of the more you reread it. As well, like I was thinking, like I'm 70% of the way through and kind of hardly anything has happened, but it doesn't feel slow. But I feel like when I get to the end of this book, I'm really going to want to jump right into the next book, and I'm annoyed at my reading plan because I don't think it's going to allow for that. Also, I'm pretty sure there's a hold list at the library, so I won't be able to get it straight away anyway. But really enjoying my reread. Still. I probably will try and go for a run tomorrow and finish this then. Yeah, I think that's what's going to happen. Hello, so I guess it is time to wrap up this vlog because I have finished A Darker Shade of Magic, and I guess like my summary is that I think this does live up to the hype. I really had thought after not having read it for so long that maybe it was overhyped, but I think it's really good. The only thing is, like, I think I said earlier, not that much had happened, and really at the end, like, there's a bunch of action, things happen, and in a lot of ways the book wraps up, like, quite nicely. There's a good ending. It feels kind of concluded, but also, like, it's just not enough. There's not enough of the world and everything that's going on, and I'm so glad. I know there's more to come, as well as this new spin-off series. And like, even though I want more, I still think this was really good. It's just like really short. I thought, so this is like a collector's edition, and I thought I remembered that when I got them, they were quite big. But now, I don't know, have I been reading some really big books? Because this seems small to me now. And I think like the text, it's a decent size, not too big. But yeah, it was a much shorter book than I remember it being, and that's probably because in my mind I've like combined all 3 books, so I really want to just continue the series now, but I need to wait on a hold list I think for the next book, so probably next month I will continue. What I will say as well though, I actually think that I liked the beginning more, where we're learning about the characters and we're being introduced to the world, and then the ending there's a lot more action, which even though it was well written and exciting, like, I just find the action less exciting. I'm always more interested in the world building. And in the videos, Victoria Schwab was talking about how she's well known for being like a slower writer, and that her books are quite slow and they take their time to introduce you to the world. And that probably is true, but I think I'm realizing that that's what I like to read. Another thing that I do find interesting about this is, so it's clear from the videos that Victoria Schwab in her mind is setting up like Cal and Lila are meant to be like romantic interests to some degree. But really, I don't feel it at all in the first book. And it kind of reminds me of Schwab's Dark Duets duology. I remember the first book, everyone was like, it's so great because there's no romantic duo. And then in the second book, there was kind of some romance, maybe not the best romance, but I think for me, when Victoria Schwab writes these romances, I often don't feel it. Like I don't ship Lila and Cal particularly, even though while I was reading this, I was always looking for like, where are the hints? Like, where is the connection between the two of them? And maybe it was the way the audiobook narrator was voicing Lila, because honestly, anyone who talks like that, how could anyone ever be in love with them? I don't know. I just really didn't like that audiobook narrator. So I think I'm glad this was a reread, because I don't know if I could have gotten past that if it was my first read of the book. Anyway, the other thing that I do want to mention reading at the end of the week, since I had finished A Monster Calls, I did pick up Lightfall, this graphic novel from the library. It's the first book of, I think there's going to be 3, maybe a lot more. It's 2 released so far. I'm on a hold now for the second one, because this was absolutely beautiful. I actually picked it up because my sister recommended it. She said it's got like dark crystal vibes, and I have to say she was right. It kind of got these scary bird things. You can't see them very well in this picture, but they come in through the story. And when Jace looked out over my shoulder at it, he was like, oh, is that a Skeksis? And it's also like a really interesting world where the sun has been lost somehow, and they have like these artificial lights lighting the world. And basically we're following this young girl who is like the apprentice to this pig wizard, and he goes missing, and she pairs up with this other guy, the last of the Guldurians, who I think made those artificial lights. And they kind of go on a bit of a quest to try and find the pig wizard. And it's just really, it's just really lovely. I was going to flick through to show you, but like, Libby doesn't want to load it, so I guess not. But it's really lovely. If you want a really cute and lovely, I'll say lovely a few more times, shall I? If you want a really cute and beautiful graphic novel, this is a good one. It's a good one. Anyway, so that is my reading for the week. I think I'm kind of caught up on things. I don't know how long that will last, but let me know if you've read either of these. I would love to talk with you about them down in the comments, or let me know anything else great that you've been reading lately. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you are doing well, and I will see you next time.